Hi, this is Burr Stewart, and welcome to another in my series of model railroad operations videos. Today we're going to finally take care of those two red CP boxcars on the N-scale layout that were off spot on the siding next to the siding on the main line. The videos in this series usually take place on my or other people's HO scale layouts, but occasionally we work in N-scale, and I have a small N-scale layout in the living room, which this operation took place on. We started out this operation by coming into town with a way freight powered by a single GE C44-9W, which was made by ScaleTrains several years ago. I know this is more of a modern era, but you can see from this paint scheme, it's one of the earlier locomotives in the BNSF fleet, and I haven't had the discipline yet to narrow the time frame of the N-scale layout down. So you see some 40-foot boxcars as well as more modern equipment. We'll get there. As you see, we're passing those two red boxcars. They've been sitting there off spot for months and months, and I keep looking at the layout in the living room and thinking, when am I going to spot those cars at the customer? So today we finally got that job done. This train, this local, came into town with the sole purpose of moving those two red cars. So the first thing it has to do is clear the switch on the rear end here so that it can get in at them. And then, of course, the engine will have to run around the train and pick up the red cars from the rear and shove them onto the paper mill, which is off to the right there. These two cars are from Microtrains and were weathered by Mark Dance. You can see the little baby on top of the box. That's our temporary paper mill. First thing we have to do is uncouple the engine from the train, and you can see how easy it is to uncouple N-scale couplers with a pick. I am being facetious. During the COVID pandemic, I spent some time rebuilding this town site for a future Scott paper mill model, but I haven't finished laying the track, ballasting it, building the Scott paper model, any of those things. But as you have probably heard, the sooner you can operate your layout, the better, just because you discover changes you might want to make, which are much easier to make before you put down all that ballast and glue and even track alignment. So for example, these unballasted tracks behind us are only glued down with a tiny bit of liquid latex, and it'll be very easy for me to move them if I decide to, once I have the paper mill model under construction. Well, the brakeman has stepped out and flipped that switch so that we can use the main line to run around the cars that we came into town with. As you know, 3 toots means we're backing up now. This ScaleTrains locomotive has an ESU decoder in it, which is what you're hearing, the sound decoder. I don't know how they get all that in this small a locomotive. Oops! Something went wrong there. Oh, I was going across the points. So we had to send the brakeman out to flip the switch, and then we had to start up the engine again. My goodness. Well, the brakeman jumped out to flip those points, and she seems to be doing okay. I guess I could use an uncoupling pick to flip the points instead of my finger. All right, let's look at the situation here. We need to flip those points too so we can get around our train, and then we need to back onto the red cars and then shove them up into the plant. Whoops, we forgot to flip the reversing lever. Isn't this fun? Just one mistake after another. My friends tell me it's just like real railroading. I call this reality model railroading. With any luck, we won't damage the cars when we hit them. Bang! Well, at this point in the video, I accidentally turned the camera off, not realizing it. So we have to advance to further along in the session. You can see I had successfully coupled onto those two cars, backed up over the bridge again, and now we're shoving into the plant where the cars need to be dropped, or as they say, spotted. Doesn't that engine noise sound great? Even in N scale. I love it. Bang! This is what we call the hard knock school of uncoupling. Just shove the locomotive, shove the car, whatever it takes to get that thing uncoupled. All's well that ends well. Oops, I think that's because a switch point isn't making contact. I'll have to send the MOW crew out there soon. It's not easy to run a throttle and a camera and blow the horn and position the locomotive just right. We didn't have to be all the way over the bridge like that. But here we are. You've got to admit this is a really nice looking locomotive. Well, in the cab, we're congratulating ourselves about a job well done, and thankful that the Scott Paper Company didn't use some other railroad to get its cars spotted. Of course, there is no other railroad, so we're lucky there. If you go back and watch the other videos on this channel, you'll find several references to me wanting to spot those two red cars, and it's quite a while ago, so it's kind of shameful that it took us this long to get it done. But I'm glad you're here now and we're getting it done. All right, the brakeman's climbing out, going to flip the points. With DCC, the operation of these N-scale locomotives is really smooth. It's because of that constant 12 to 14 volts on the rails that it busts through whatever dirt there may be. Bang! Ooh, wasn't that smooth? Well, let's take one more admiring look at our two spotted red boxcars. There's nothing more satisfying than declaring victory. Especially if you have a horn to blow on. Well, now our train is headed off to the next town and whatever switching assignments it may have there. Except one more thing. Have you heard the term line from behind? That means you need to stop your train, have the brakeman get out, and flip the switch line for the main before you head out on the main. Having a little trouble getting the camera pointed at it, but here we go. Now we've lined the switch back for the main, and we can leave. The only thing I don't quite get is, how does the brakeman at the rear of this train get back on the locomotive since there's no caboose? In modern times, would the train back up and pick him up? Or would he walk the entire length of the train before they could depart? These are questions which plague model railroad operations, and if you know anything about the answers, I hope you'll comment in the comment. Meanwhile, we'll look at those red boxcars one more time and enjoy the train that we've just run, highballing along the main, past the next town where I guess it has no work. And thank you for joining me on this little operations video in N scale. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and you'll watch the rest of the videos on my channel. In the meantime, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains. Oh, and here's a shot I couldn't resist taking the following morning of the sun streaming in the window on those red boxcars. And this gives you a nice overview of the entire layout. We'll come back in future videos to other kinds of operations. Bye now.